sure we mention the passing of NBA WVU legend Jerry West, who passed away at 86. And we're all heartbroken here, and I know in West Virginia, but all over the country, I'm sure. What a great example and person he was, and a representative of West Virginia all through his life. And I was just it got me curious. I've been been listening as we watch this graphic to some of the statistics. All the radio stations, of course, talking about it, and I read these statistics and I was just amazed at them. But oddly enough, and watching his talents is enough, and looking at his points per game, his assists, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that caught my attention as I was scrolling through some ESPN stats on him, in 13 years with the Lakers in the NBA, he never had one ejection or one technical foul. And I found that to be amazing. And I took a double take. I'm sure, am I reading that right? And I thought, that tells you right there, what kind of a person he was. And of course, we all know what kind of a basketball player he was. Just phenomenal.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And we're seeing some footage of that phenomenal season.
Yep.
Back in the late 50s that led to a national championship game against California. And you're going to see the end of it. I really think if the Mountaineers had just a few more seconds, they would have won that game.
Yep.
They lost 71-70. And I remember as a small kid, I was lucky enough to grow up in Syracuse, New York. And back in those days, the NBA teams were clustered in the Northeast. And so there was a pro team, believe it or not, the Syracuse Nationals that are now the Philadelphia 76ers. So as a very young kid, all my friends were into basketball, pro basketball. And so I started watching college basketball. I was there when Jimmy Brown was on the football team. A lot of people don't know he was a 2-year starter on the basketball team. And then he also made All-America as a lacrosse player. So, there was a lot to follow. But this game was phenomenal at the end. And you're going to see it here. This is the championship game against Cal. West Virginia actually is in white because we were the higher ranked team. He missed the free throw, and that was the end of the game.
Yep.
And West Virginia lost by 1 point. And it was, so close. And then as a pro, I remember this situation right here. In April of 1970, I remember watching this game on Jones Avenue where we live. And there's the great Walt Frazier. Yep. Dave DeBusschere hits that shot to win the game in the NBA playoffs. And there's Jerry West with a 60-footer. And they won. 60-footer.
Yeah, that particular play is one, I guess, is about my first memory of Jerry West. And back then, you got to watch the games, but they were on tape delay. And but we had heard about his shot. So we all stayed up late at night. It didn't come on until 11:30 at night and watched the replay because we knew he hit that shot. And that's one of my earliest memories of watching basketball. So I didn't get to see him play really in his prime. I'm sure I did. I just don't remember it. And but I do remember seeing that shot, and I always loved that because I knew he was from West Virginia. And he had you look again. You hear these guys talking today, and I heard the Van Gundy guy on the NBA broadcast the other day talk about Doncic and Kyrie Irving being the greatest scoring backcourt in the history of the NBA. And I thought, how far is he talking? How far back? I said, because I went back and looked at Jerry West and Gail Goodrich.
Yeah.
They both averaged
can't beat them
26, 27 points a game, plus 7 or 8 assists a game. And I'm thinking they're not averaging that. And you think about Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe and people like that. I'm like, where do these guys come up with these wild things they throw out? And I'm like, really, you can't compare that stuff. But
that's right.
You look through these stats. Another thing that stuck out in my mind, other than the technicals, was his shooting percentage. His lowest shooting percentage season was his first season in 61. He shot 42%. After that, he never was below 44. One year he shot 51% from the floor. That's 47%, 47, 49, 48. That's not that's not common. These guys, even today, the great shooters, they practically shoot just about every time they get the ball. They may average more points, but as far as percentages goes, man, I'm telling you what, I don't know if there's too many that has a career that long with that level of shooting percentage. I mean, it's just, if you look at it, it's just amazing. Like I said, the lowest after that was 44% the next year. And then it went 46, 48, 49, 51, 49%. That's amazing. Unreal. And of course, his free throw percentage was over a career was 80% And you just don't see that anymore with that long of a career. Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And as great as that 1970 event was, with that 60-foot shot that won the game in overtime, I think this one was even better. I don't know if you remember this, Mick. I do. Going back to 1962, also in the NBA Finals. And what's interesting about this, it's against the hated Boston Celtics back then, because the Los Angeles, they're not now, obviously.
Yeah.
But he was playing against Bob Cousy, who was an icon.
Yeah.
And let me show you the film on this. It's amazing. End of the game. They're getting the ball into Cousy, number 14. Jerry West steals the ball and scores at the buzzer.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And, I always said too, even though, basketball purists, basketball fanatics all understood how good Jerry West was, I don't know that he ever got the credit. You just didn't hear talk about him, but mainly because of the championships. He only won one. But I said, you look back, I think he played in 9 NBA finals. The Boston Celtics, of course, had a phenomenal team, and just had better teams. They had better people around, their main players than what the Lakers did. But he played in 9 NBA finals. I mean, that's in 13 years. That's pretty phenomenal in itself. But yeah, that footage is unbelievable to watch. That's awesome. He was a great player. And I don't know, like I said, everybody that knows basketball knows how good he was and understands. I think some of the younger people obviously don't understand how good he was. But I think a lot of it is, had he won 4 or 5 of those NBA finals, then that's all we would heard about forever. But because he didn't, it kind of took away a little bit from his legacy. And then, of course, the younger kids don't understand the logo either. And I said, name, image, and likeness. I said, the NBA, they've never come out and said, it's Jerry West, but there sure is an awful lot of likeness in that picture.
It is Jerry West.
You've seen the picture. So he can, and I'm sure they never admitted it because they probably had to pay him a fortune.
I was rewatching today when back in, I think, 2005, I think it was the Hall of Fame. Anyway, he acknowledged Willie Aker as his soulmate. And, Willie is a legend in West Virginia coaching. And I think won 75% of his games. Was it Logan County?
Logan.
Yeah, Logan.
I'll tell you somebody else. Sorry, Frank, for interrupting.
No, please. Not at all.
I was listening to Mike Russo today on the radio, and he had Rod Thorne on.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and that was a great interview. And Rod Thorne talked about, he said, in all honesty, he said when Jerry was a junior, he said he was a great player and everybody knew it. But he said, really, he was second to Willie Akers. He said there was a guy named Willie Akers who got all the headlines and was considered the best basketball player. And he said, of course, Jerry then went on the senior year and had a phenomenal year and kind of changed the narrative a little bit. But Willie Akers was a heck of a basketball player in his own.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, he really, really was.
Frank, I did want to comment a little bit about Mr. Clutch here. Zeke from Cabin Creek. It's a sad, sad day for not only all West Virginians, and not only all fans of the Los Angeles Lakers, and not only all basketball fans, but anyone that knows the character of the man, where he came from, in a holler between 2 mountains in Cabin Creek. I don't know if you read the story or not, is his house and his driveway where he had his basketball goal actually was his neighbor's house. He used to go over and play basketball with and practice, and it was on the side of a hill. Yeah. So he made sure he sharpened his shooting percentage because he did not want to run downhill to have to get that basketball.
How about that?
The logo, from Zeke, from Cabin Creek to the logo. I thought John Antoni did a great job in describing, if you read the article that John wrote about Jerry today and his passing. But, I mean, what a record the man set. And, I mean, what an image, what a gold standard to set. And certainly the greatest athlete ever to come out of West Virginia, in my estimation. Yep, and, to your point, Greg, he competed in 9 NBA championship games, won 1. I think the Boston Celtics beat him 8 times. Yeah. And I heard Bill Russell say one time, who arguably is the greatest defensive player ever in the NBA, in my estimation. But he said, Jerry West may not have won a championship, but he was always a champion. Yeah. And I think that speaks to the character of the man. Not only did he come within 1 point of winning, the national championship, he went on to play with Oscar Robertson in the Olympics that next summer. And then he went on with his stellar career. And I believe, Greg, that the 13 seasons he played in the NBA, he was on the NBA All-Star team 13 years in a row. Yeah, I don't know that if anyone has matched that sort of a record. Yeah. And not only is in the Hall of Fame as a player, but he'll be enshrined this October as what they call a contributor for his general manager role with the Lakers. Yep. And what a great image for the state of West Virginia to be so proud of.
On the show today, Rod Thorne said that because Mickey mentioned the Zeke from Cabin Creek, which he didn't like that nickname. I heard him say one time he said it made him feel like he had the appearance of being some hick from up in the woods in a holler somewhere. And I thought, okay, I've been to Cabin Creek, so why are you offended? But anyway, so Rod Thorne said that he was telling Mike Russo, of course, who's from up north in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, somewhere. He said, when you drive through, he said there's a sign on one side of it. It says, welcome to Cabin Creek. And he said on the same sign on the backside coming the other way, it says welcome to Shillian. So he said you got one sign there for both towns. So, and another thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to, when I was talking about his stats. He won the Most Valuable Player award in 1969, and they got beat in that championship. But he won the MVP in that championship for the series. And I said, you don't hear of that happen, So that was another thing. And then one last story, personal story. He did come down to Tex Williams Arty Museum when Tex had him in placed enshrined, and he came down and helped with the grand opening and all that. And what a humble guy. I mean, if you've ever been to Arty, West Virginia, you'll know what I'm talking about. Cabin Creek is a metropolis compared to Arty. And he came down and talked, gave a speech and talked and hung around, gave autographs, talked to people. Just a phenomenal guy. He was so gracious and humble and gave you the impression that he was tickled to death to be there, And I'll never forget when I was just a young kid, my dad was sick. He had ALS, and he always a big sports fan, and always he would try to get his buddies riled up. So he would always tell his buddies that Oscar Robertson was better than Jerry West. He'd always tell them that. He'd say, Oscar Robertson was a lot better than Jerry West. He'd just do it to get him going. Well, they had gone somewhere to watch some event down in Charleston. Jerry West was there. And I'll never forget, he signed a program for my dad. And my dad at that time was confined to a wheelchair. But it said, and they called him Babe. He said, "Dear Babe, I am better than the Big O, Jerry West." And I said, my dad treasured that. And I said, what I wouldn't give to have a copy of that right now. But yeah, he just said, "I'm better than the Big O."
That's tremendous.
Yeah. And we look forward to coming to you next week on the Mountaineer Locker Room, then and now. Good night, everybody.
Let's go Mountaineers.